Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with extra-hop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how extra-hop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/extra-hop. That's extra HOP.
Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. When it comes to cybersecurity, the biggest threats are the ones you never see coming. SecureWorks detects and responds to cyber attackers' ever-changing tactics. We come armed with Taegis, a security analytics platform designed to recognize attacks and stop them before they do harm. SecureWorks, defending every corner of cyberspace. Learn more at securityweekly.com/SecureWorks. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Follow us on Twitter for live stream reminders, highlighted clips, memes, and more. You can find us at Sec Weekly. Same thing, I think, on Mastodon also, which we are playing with right now, in case Twitter has an unfortunate accident. And now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. Check out securityweekly.com/ESW 298 if you want to check out the stories that we're going to be talking about today and read my notes. And not a whole lot of funding this week. We've got 3 items. 2 of those just popped up pretty recently. I guess it's understandable people don't want to announce financing during Thanksgiving week. A lot of U.S.-based companies in cybersecurity, a lot of U.S.-based investors as well. So, yeah. See, 2 kind of mid-size Series B, a 31 million Series B for Sphere. And I had kind of a hard time figuring out what they do. To be honest, they said identity hygiene. It's clearly around identity, but I don't know how.
So it's really interesting that there is I'm seeing it in multiple deals, multiple pitches. I'm getting this at this point as an investor. I feel like an identity-based security is about to make a leap. I've also seen it in some of the new stuff put out by Gartner in the 2022 trends. As we move into 2023, identity-based cybersecurity is becoming a new hot item. I feel like Sphere is doing something around that. Not exactly sure specifically what they're doing, but identity hygiene is kind of becoming a hot topic that I'm seeing a lot of funding money go towards. I can't speak specifically for Sphere because, again, it's one of those scenarios where it's jargon soup by a potentially mediocre agency for the press release, so it's tough to know for sure.
And they're 13 years old and only in a Series B, so I suspect it was maybe one of these situations where they were more of a services company and are now building a product and raising funds to build that product. But I'm just guessing.
Yeah, ForgePoint, they're not dummies, right? ForgePoint does great investments, and so there's got to be something there. There's got to be some reason. Also, a $35 million B is tiny compared to what it was in the old days, right? So either this is the new sizing, or maybe it's the right sizing for a company that's growing in a healthy way. So it's interesting. We always used to poo-poo the kind of the companies that were services, pro-serve-based companies that are then converting to product, right? Because, okay, you bootstrapped your company with pro-serve. Now you're trying to get into product so you can get a better multiple and eventually sell the company, right? That's kind of the game plan. But what's interesting now is almost like a pro-serve-based function could be a much healthier-based company than some of the traditional high flyers in VC, given what matters to investors now. What matters to investors is efficient use of funds resulting in hopefully profitable companies, right? The more traditional version of what makes a company good. And so it's going to be neat to see whether some of these pro-serve to product plays, not whether Sphere is that or not, I'm not sure, but some of these pro-serve to product conversions become more of a hot button with the investment community.
You think maybe that can be problematic though? Like, having two sides of the business there, that, maybe some competition with each other or, difficulty focusing on building the product, or vice versa. I mean, it's certainly nice to have the services to be able to back the product. You can do implementation stuff. You can, you don't have to worry about initial growth nearly as much because you already have revenue coming in. Certainly taking some money creates some of that pressure that you would have if that's the only thing you were doing, I would expect. But also, I wonder if in some ways it can make it harder having services as well. Especially like question. Really well-established services.
Yeah, it's a great
few
question.
Different ways to do it too.
Traditionally, I'll hand it to you when I'm done. Traditionally, the pro-serve side of the business has gotten a very low multiple. So as soon as you take in invested capital into like a venture to push forward product, they want much higher growth, much higher return, things like that. And as a business, it's very difficult to deliver high return and kind of slow, healthy growth at the same time, which is what makes it a little bit more difficult. But if we're seeing a massive compression in venture-backed valuations and expectations on growth rates to be a more healthy growth rate, it may begin to unify these two to make it an easier version of building a business. But you're right. I think there's all sorts of difficulties that come in play when you have a pro-serve business that also does products. I just don't think it's as dangerous as it was prior to the macroeconomic collapse. So over to you, Sean. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways to do it and do it smartly. Certainly, if a company has grown doing certain services, that they then are able to transition over to a product and they've leveraged that knowledge and experience and existing customer base in order to expand. That's one way that seems like it could be successful. If they have transitioned from their services into this product, that's another interesting way. And then shifting over to, as I believe Adrian was talking about, using pro services to help deploy and support and continue that. That's pretty interesting also. But I don't know, Tyler, what do you think about those two different approaches? Which do you think is more successful, or does it really matter or depend on the goal of the company and what the product is actually doing?
It's all goal dependent. I don't think it matters too much. I think it's a function of doing what's going to give you the healthy returns as a business that are going to then throw off the correct amount of capital to the investors, or if there's no investors, the correct amount of capital to you as the founder of the company, right? I think there's a million different ways to build businesses. Literally, there's as many different ways as there are ideas. And it's just a function of matching the market, the product, the expectations of growth, the expectations of invested return, and the potential for the business. And things get difficult when those gears in the complex system become out of whack with each other, right? And so, yeah, you have to look at the entirety of that complex system and understand it and manage it as one big system.
Yeah, so the next one here gets some special bonus points for me, Pangea, because they use a lot of Jurassic Park examples on their website. Their little, kind of animated GIF demos. Yeah, there's some Dennis Nedry in there, which I appreciate it, and I appreciate the. I don't know how unique this is for security. I think you see this a lot in DevOps and on the IT side of things, on the dev side of things. But I haven't seen many pure play security companies with this kind of, like we're building these easily integratable API based security functions that you can build into your applications, which is what Pangea does. They're trying to call it secure platform as a service, but I'm not a big fan of that because that could be anything, right? Like Palo Alto Prisma could be a secure platform as a service. It's just a bit too nebulous for me. But then, I don't know what else you call this. I don't know if anybody else has seen more specific names for this kind of service.
Huh. If only it were that easy. There's so much here, so much different things. Like the website's a little. I'm on the purpose page in particular, and it's a little bit difficult to grok everything that is there as a purpose or as a product. I'm on. Oh, I see. It's an SPA. Actually, it's a single page. So the whole thing's just tough to grok. I wish they had some clarity on message, because I think fundamentally, if I distill out and say, hey, is there a platform we can use to build our applications that are going to create applications in a secure manner from the ground up? I love that in theory as an idea. I have no idea, based on the difficulty to understand their website, if they can deliver that. But in theory, I like it.
It's really not that. It's specific functions. It's like, okay, if you need a secure audit log, they have that. If you need to be able to redact information on your app, they have a widget for that. So it's almost like functions that you're buying.
Right, which if you group those functions, I would consider them a platform that you can build secure applications on top of. But you are correct, right? Functionally, it's a grouping of functions, no pun intended, I guess. It does actually fit another investment thesis I have, which is focusing on API-driven security, which I really like the concept of, because at the end of the day, if we can use APIs to secure our system in automated ways, similar to the way we've taken functions and moved those off into third-party SaaS applications that are essentially APIs. If the more we can move into APIs, the more we can kind of distribute the workload amongst technologies or vendors or clouds. Things get a lot easier to implement over time. Is now the right time for it? Am I too early? I don't know. But if that is what they're doing, is distributing security functionality via APIs, I like it in theory. I like the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they're very specific application building blocks, basically. Yeah. Like there's nothing here that's going to tell you that your application is insecure or anything like that. It's like, well, we've got to pull in files from our customers, so we need some way to check those files and make sure that there's nothing malicious in the files that customers are uploading into our app. So they have a widget for that, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we think about why is Apple iPhones more? Why don't we see massive iPhone attacks? Right? Sure, there's some flaws. I get it, and things.
Or Android, yeah,
there, or Android for that matter, but mobile in general. It's because all of the security stuff is actively built in a reasonable way. It's not perfect. There's no perfection there. But what if we could do something similar for traditional compute, right? And to do that, you'd have to distribute that workload via APIs, which is what they're seeming to try to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I remember talking to Josh Corman about that years and years ago when he was working on his rugged software thing and DevOps with Gene and Kim. Yeah, good stuff. Sorry, Spaff and Gene Kim. Gene Kim is one person. Sorry. made him sound like two people. I'm still not 100%, folks.
Yeah, for those of you that can't tell, Adrian is working at perfect capacity today. He's at his top-notch self.
All right, let's. So Palo Alto Networks finally did a deal here. We've seen several vendors, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, I think maybe even SentinelOne. There've been a few of these really big players that have kind of replaced the McAfees and the Symantec's that have been struggling to find a buy. And it sounds like it's all been around getting people, getting the acquiree and the acquirer to agree on a valuation, which I guess nobody knows what the valuations are supposed to be anymore. So a lot of these deals have kind of fallen apart because, I can only assume the acquirer is too low and the acquiree is too high, and they're just not finding a middle ground that they can agree on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's exactly the problem we're having. I would have expected a much higher quantity of acquisitions to have occurred at this point in cyber. But I think it's exactly what you're describing. The overheated investment world created egos, founder egos, investor egos that are high. Investor egos are probably not the bigger problem, because the investors, that's financial math, right? They do specific financial math here that says this is profitable, not profitable, take write-downs, don't take write-downs, et cetera. So it's easier for them to say, okay, I'm going to take these write-downs because in the future we're going to grow results in these other ways. But I think founders and founders hold the majority of equity in these situations through certain stages, through, like, let's say A or B. Those acquisitions come with founders who are like, hey, a year ago I was worth 800, 900 million. Now the most I can get is 300. Oh, no, no, I'm just going to hold if that's the case. And it's funny, I think at the end of the day, it's like, hey, you can pocket 300 million, you own 30%. You can pocket 60 million of that, or 90 million of that in your own pocket. Or, you can hold on and try to make 600 million and you'll pocket 180 million in your pocket. And I always tell founders, look, either way, you're still flying private, buddy. What difference does it make, And I think some of these early stage founders are going to have a day of reckoning where they have to come down to reality of what the current market for their businesses are. It's no longer as high as it once was.
Yeah, I've seen a few specifically kind of shun some acquisition offers, and I remember kind of shaking my head to myself, thinking, you might regret that later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The crush is real, folks. The crush is real.
Yeah, the number of asks to the dance that you get as you grow larger and take more money tends to go down pretty drastically, pretty quickly.
Yep.
So there's this Tyler. You want to talk about the Building Cyber Collective here? I think you're more aware of it, or not. We're both aware of it, but I think you're a bit deeper into it than I am.
Yeah, I wish I could say I've dived, gotten super in depth with it. I did read through the majority of the main content. I like what I see. I like the concept. It's put on by a gentleman named Ross, and I'm going to mutilate his last name. So Ross, if you're listening, I apologize. Ross Halaluik. He's head of product at Lima Charlie, but he also does a lot of writing. He puts out a newsletter, which I love. And of course, the minute I say it, I can't remember the name of the newsletter, but I subscribe to his newsletter. I love it. He puts out a lot of great content. And he started something that is he's calling the Building Cyber Collective, which is intended to bring together advisors, investors, and founders in new cyber companies. Basically, if you sign up as an advisor, you commit to providing a certain level of service, 4 hours of free consulting for startups, and then you can figure out where that takes you from there, right? And here's the interesting thing. It's exactly how I got into cyber investing. I started just doing advisor roles where I'd meet a founder and say, hey, what can I do to help you? And I didn't put a time limit on it, but in essence, I would do an hour a week or an hour a month or a couple hours a month. And eventually they came back and said, hey, can you help us do X, Y, Z? We'll give you an advisor role, or we'll move you into an investor role, whatever those cases may be. And that's exactly what he's trying to foster, is that karma-based, hey, let's help each other build new cyber companies, and then we will all collectively reap the rewards. So it's kind of like a accelerator meets an advisor studio or something. I really like the idea.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yes, and you're right. Venture in Security is the name of his newsletter. Thank you, Adrian.
Yep, I'm here for you.
Yeah,
I was looking it up while you were talking. Prelude, I found very, very interesting. They have a community tier, and it's a product that you download and install, and it looks like it's a breach and attack simulation product. So they generate these different scenarios, these different tests that you can run in your environment to test your different security controls, which is something I've been in love with for a long time. I worked for an attack simulation, a breach and attack simulation vendor at one point. Haven't had a chance to check this out before, but it sounds really exciting.
Yeah,
it's called Prelude Orchestrator or Operator. Sorry.
Yeah, no, this website's a little confusing as well, but it's I believe in the space too. Another one of my friends recently started a similar concept. So I've been talking a lot about cloud security. We talked about it in the first segment, how cloud security is rapidly disrupting all of cyber. And I think in some ways, the transition to cloud, not cloud security, but the transition to cloud is disrupting all of cyber. And I think that's what this really is, because we've had continuous security testing kind of from a DAST approach to websites for a long time now, right? You say, here's my domain, continue to scan it for network and for app attacks or whatever. We've had that for a while. But how does it shift or change when we are using APIs, when we are using cloud native workloads, when we're using cloud native functions? That's the fundamental difference, where I think some of these newer companies like Prelude and the new company that I'm talking about, which I don't want to say quite yet because he's still in stealth, they're taking a new approach to, it doesn't matter how you design the applications, it doesn't matter how you build them in a true cloud native modern way, we will be able to continually assess that universe, be it through asset management and configuration states, be it through continuous dynamic testing, be it through maybe SAST in some kind of unique SAST approach. I think there's some reinvention here that I'm pretty excited about, actually. AppSec meets cloud.
Well, and this isn't so much about vulnerability management. A lot of this, I think for me, one of the most valuable use cases of this is, are my tools even sending alerts to the right places? This is, we're going to simulate the attack. Do people actually know that the attack happened? And this is something Ryan was talking about, is one of the improvements they're looking for in terms of the human angle is knowing that an attack happened sooner and quicker and being able to respond to it sooner. Well, you can't do that if your tools are misconfigured and you're not getting an alert when an attack happens. We know tools have gaps, things that they're going to miss. And to me, the whole BAS space should be about, hey, is my stuff actually turned on? Is it working? Is it monitoring the right things? We hear these horror stories of, the IDS was plugged into the wrong span port, or the span port was misconfigured.
Yeah.
It wasn't seeing the right traffic. I love to use examples from Equifax, and there was one example there where the emerging threats team wrote a snort rule for the struts vulnerability. Then they handed it off to the SecOps team, and the SecOps team threw it on the IDS. Neither team tested that snort rule to see if it worked. It didn't work.
Yeah, that's a great point about gaps there, Adrian, because the issue that we've seen, we do security assessments all the time with large companies and small, and one of the things that we see consistently is companies and organizations not understanding where those gaps are, where those blind spots are, as far as alerting the events. First of all, are the events getting logged on the system that matter? Is the event flow from those systems flowing into a central logging system, be it a SIM or something else? And then what is the output of that? Is there something that's an intelligent alert to alert the SOC operators and or other people so that they are able to take action for it? Because there's several different parts of that chain. And the final one should be, okay, if this alert happens, this is the action that needs to take place, whether that's an incident that gets spun up, remediation, or is there some sort of automatic or manual action that has to occur around that? From what I've seen, most enterprises are not prepared for the attacks that are happening today, or even have appropriate visibility around it. So something that could help test it more easily and give them that insight, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. But what I was getting at, because I totally agree, like that's a very important aspect of what they're building. It's kind of the extension of BAS into a more modern environment, though, that excites me. So they have this concept of an operator, which is a free production-ready infrastructure for continuously testing your systems. What does testing your systems mean? Like, there's lots of different ways to test your systems. And if the system design has changed from traditional BAS to this modern universe, so that a new BAS has to be created, I think it has to follow both things. I think it has to be able to understand the new style infrastructures to do continuous tests that are pertinent to that model for the result of what you guys are talking about, which is to make sure that the stuff on the backside is properly configured right.
Right. Yeah. And traditionally, BAS has been all about detecting lateral movement, though I imagine it's moved beyond that by now.
It has to. If it doesn't, it'll be left behind, because lateral movement in what regard? Lateral movement in a traditional data center is very, very different than lateral movement in a modern deployment.
And all very agent based. And this one also does appear to be agent based, where you have to install agents to actually run the tests. And some of them require agents on both ends, because one of the features is like the agent on the other end will, confirm, yes, I saw the attack. So it tends to be more for like segmentation testing and stuff like that, which I think is a little bit less useful. I think it's more important to use this to test your actual security operations team. Your is your SOC, all the money you're spending on your SOC, any use at all, or are they going to miss every attack that this thing throws out?
So Prelude folks, if you see this or hear this, please reach out to me. I want a demo. I'd love to hear more about it so I can talk more intelligently about your market. Super cool idea.
Yeah, they do have I forget where it was, but there is a good video somewhere where
and they have a blog too. feed.prelude.org is the great blog.
Yep. Good stuff. Moving on, Revelstoke SOAR looks like a Tynes competitor. Another zero code kind of drag and drop, build your if this then that security automation scenarios, and really nice animated GIF on the front page there. I love it when they do that, when you can just like stare at that animated GIF, be like, okay, yeah, I get the core of what you do here.
Yes, absolutely fantastic. No, it's funny if you scroll down. They've got a big square SOAR is dead, long live SOAR, which is how many times I've declared markets dead over the last 15 years of analyzing markets. They've all died and been reinvented 1,000 times. But
that was our job. That was our job, to declare things dead.
Yeah, exactly. This is dead. This is dead.
We were analysts.
The network is the computer, right?
But in our defense, though, Adrian, we were, and that's exactly why we were declaring stuff dead. But at the same time, stuff gets reinvented constantly. All these markets are getting reinvented to handle new things. Like if we just take the cloud stuff that I was talking about, cloud is causing every cyber piece to be reinvented. APIs being the motivating factor of how applications work today is causing SOAR to be reinvented, because now you can automate huge things with the response side of it, which is why I love Tynes. I love all of those companies that are doing this kind of SOC automation explosion. Now, is it a new SOAR? I don't care what you call it. Leave it to the analysts to declare a market dead and declare this the new SOAR. Whatever the case may be, I think at the end of the day, automation is coming from the fact that we are now API derived as a security vendor community, as well as how we build all of our applications today. So I think the concept is really cool. I hope they are very successful in what they're doing.
Yeah. It's just, a lot of security products haven't really done a very good job with usability, and SOAR v1 is definitely in that camp.
Yeah.
We had, I forget the guy's last name, but Ryan from Brooks Running, who we've had on the show a couple times. He was talking about, like, with one of the v1 SOAR vendors, it took 6 months what he was able to do with a v2 vendor in like a couple hours. So it was just night and day, the difference in the amount of effort you need to put in to have something usefully automated.
Yeah. This is going to be a massive space. I don't know who wins it. There's a lot of players in it, but it's going to be a massive space.
Oh yeah. Yep. And it's and the nice thing is with most of these, you can build libraries. So you can build it once, share it with other people, obviously without your credentials and stuff like that plugged into your workflow. And, Tynes calls them stories. I don't know what this company calls them. Sometimes they're recipes, sometimes they're workflows. But I love that people can take their creativity and share it. And there's a library where you can go and get ideas for how to be more productive.
Yep. I'm a big fan.
Me too. And we were talking about DSPM earlier. I think in our first interview, Ron even mentioned Wiz as a big up and comer here. And sure enough, they're in his space. They're the first non-pure play DSPM. So I guess we should expect the Laceworks and the Orcas to either acquire their way in or build DSPM in-house in the near future.
Wiz is in everybody's space.
This is also another example of a category becoming redefined, right? To a degree, this is just an evolution of some of the data security things that we've built in the past, some of which worked, some of which didn't. But this is an adaptation for modern workplaces. And, it's yet to be determined how well this works. But it is just a reinvention.
Yep. Yeah, it's so I tend to throw V2 on the end of a lot of these things. SOAR V2, DLP V2. I mean, obviously, it's you can't directly compare it to DLP because the way we were implementing DLP, where we were implementing it, is very different from how DSPM is doing it today. But ultimately, the goal is still the same. It's where's my data? What kind of data is it? How would I classify it? And what's it doing? Where is it going? And where do I have problems? Is it in places that it shouldn't be? And it's really, really tough problem to solve. And with each year it gets harder and harder as we encrypt in more and more layers. It's just really tough.
Yep.
Data is a tough one. You can't install an agent on data. All right, so number 9 here. This actually just came out this morning, came off embargo this morning. But yet another case where researchers were able to pull back the curtain and access multi-tenant break on IBM's cloud here, access other customers, with kind of a chain of different things that they found in this case. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but it's not particularly unique in that it's yet another tenancy break. But they're trying to say it's unique, I think, because the method was using something that wasn't IBM's, was using PostgreSQL. I'm not sure I fully understood what they were saying was unique about it either, but certainly not a great thing. But of course, all of these, when we hear about them, they're already fixed. So that's, I guess, a good thing. You don't have to wait for people to patch when it's somebody's cloud. At least it all gets patched at once, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, I've been around breaking stuff for 20 years, right? I was a cybersecurity consultant doing research back in the early 2000s, right? Finding 0-day. Back then, you find something, you were lucky to pop, one binary, and then you had to figure out how to get in and execute the flaw into the binary. Then we moved into web, and it was like, okay, you pop one website. The massive risk of pop one, grab everything didn't exist. Now, like with cloud, literally you pop a cloud, you can be jumping from customer to customer to customer and compromise the universe, right? So that's the downside. The upside is when we went to fix a flaw, we had to contact each individual vendor to get things fixed, and it took forever. And how do you distribute repairs to binaries to 5,000 customers? We're also in a situation now where it's significantly less time to repair problems, right? Because of a vulnerability found in IBM Cloud, for example, they contact IBM Cloud. Hopefully nobody else knows about it, although that's an argument we can have on a later date. But, at the end of the day, IBM hopefully can patch that quickly and all customers are fixed fast, right? So it's got an upside and a downside when cloud compromises or CSP compromises come around. But I don't see why anybody would research anything other than cloud or CSP compromises, because that's where the value really is today.
You're right. It is so big. I mean, there was issues that were talked about in the past year or so about Azure. I mean, the Cosmos DB, when you have this multi-tenant type structure where a database stores information about lots of different companies and lots of organizations' data, going after that platform is the way to get to something. Now, it's kind of like dropping onto almost like dropping into a virtual host that hosts a number of instances, because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get behind it, but you could get something pretty big as an attacker, and that could be very interesting.
My favorite one is still where if you were on Azure for a time, if you knew the ID of somebody's disk, you could mount that disk.
Oh my!
Any disk on Azure was just wide open if you knew the actual object ID for the disk.
Oh wow! Well, one of my coworkers figured out a way to get Amazon AWS log files to go to his system or his tenant versus others. And if most of the organizations that were on there, I believe that's been fixed, if they didn't have it configured to explicitly define the log file location or destination, then there was a way that you could actually end up getting it accidentally. So yeah, cloud's pretty interesting from a security perspective.
Nobody puts sensitive stuff in log files, so that's cool.
No, that's totally safe. But Adrian, do you remember if those disk IDs were predictable or sequential?
I don't know if they're predictable, but they certainly weren't kept secret. So like a lot of people would go, to forums and stuff like that and post their logs and stuff like that, which would have, Microsoft. So Azure has object IDs for everything. Your user account has an object ID, disk has an object ID, instances do. So they definitely weren't treated as sensitive, and Microsoft didn't tell you to treat them as sensitive. So yeah, it was not designed intentionally that way. It was one of those things that was overlooked. It would just mount anybody's disk if you threw that in there. So, I mean, I'm sure there's enough disks on there you could fat finger a few things and just load something, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it was at least semi-predictable, maybe not fully predictable, but still massive problem.
Yeah. I mean, if they were sequential, even worse.
Yeah.
Speaking of even worse, number 13. I say the EU, but I mean specifically this is Germany coming out and basically saying, after 2 years of negotiations with Microsoft, the Joint Committee of the German Federal Data Protection Authority and 17 state regulators published a devastating statement that essentially says that organizations currently cannot use Microsoft 365 in a lawful way under the GDPR.
Wow.
This is a very interesting one. First of all, because Germany has their own instance effectively of Azure, which is structured that way. There's a few separate Azures in the world. One is US Gov Cloud. There's commercial, obviously. There's China, and there's Germany. Those are the key ones that I can think of off the top of my head. So Germany has their own instance of Azure. So the perspective of saying that it's not GDPR compliant is interesting also. There's the EU GDPR. UK has done some additions to it. I imagine Germany has some changes as well, though I haven't seen that recently. But that's a very interesting statement from that perspective, because obviously GDPR is pretty big in the EU.
The PDF is in German, but I don't know about Google Translate, but I use DeepL is the translation tool that I use, and you can pass a PDF through it, and that's how I read the PDF here. So yeah, be interesting to see the fallout from that. I'm sure Microsoft will have to respond to that. Let's see. I think it's time to go to squirrel stories.
Let's do it. Squirrel it up.
So my first squirrel story here is, again, coming back to looking at the interesting and potentially horrible things going on in the world of AI and automatically generated content. And yeah, so there are not one. I only linked one of them here, but there are at least two projects that will automatically generate stories for kids. And they're not just like open source GitHub, like here's a thing I threw together. They have pricing. Yeah, so starting at $9, you can create 10 stories. Beautiful illustrations, they say. And this is the part, this is the reason I included this one, is they're using DALL-E. Like, I didn't even check on this. Like, you can tell if you've ever seen anybody use DALL-E 2, it butchers faces. The faces, it turns out, look like the survivors of stepping on landmines, like horrific stuff. They look horrific.
It looks like if somebody. It looks like if somebody carved a body out of butter and then stuck it in the microwave for 3 seconds.
Look at Sophia's garden.
That's what I'm looking at right now. It's disturbing. It is absolutely disturbing.
And it looks like the teddy bear below that has an eyeball on its bicep. Like, don't show this to your kids before they go to bed. The other one, and I'm kicking myself now for not having the name ready, doesn't include the images. Thankfully, I think it was inspired to say, hey, we can not only use AI to generate the story, but we can use it to generate images to go along with the story. But then I can't believe they even use these on their webpage.
This is brutal.
They went with the one that butchers faces and
Ruby and the teddy bear is bizarre. He's apparently the teddy bear is skydiving, and on the front chest of his parachute or vest he's wearing looks like a squirrel or a rat made out of metal. It is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. But I don't know if you noticed this, Adrian, too, when you're playing with it. If you scroll between pages, the images are not the same every time. They actually don't match the image to the words very well. And I think they've got a bug, and the images don't always stay properly set up.
Yeah. So should we create some enterprise security weekly stories?
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. And I'm sure if we use our names, they might even be able to find some images of us to mutilate.
That'll be our gift to our listeners. Is we'll create maybe some security weekly Christmas stories with this tool.
Yeah, I'm in. Sounds fantastic.
I'll see if I can rope Paul into it also. Maybe do it for some of the other shows. I think it'd be fun. And our last squirrel story here is Cocaine Bear. And the reason Cocaine Bear is here, apparently a lot of people have heard of this. I've never heard of this, but Knoxville is involved here, which is the reason I threw it in here. A movie that I'm sure is going to be very, very loosely based on the true story is coming out February 24th. And one of Ray Liotta's last performances before he passed away. And yeah, about a drug smuggler that threw a bag of cocaine out of a plane and a bear got into it. And they found the bear later that had apparently eaten, I forget how many pounds of cocaine and just overdosed from all the cocaine. Yes.
The premise on Wikipedia is amazing. After ingesting a duffel bag full of cocaine, an American black bear goes on a murderous rampage in a small Kentucky town where a group of locals and tourists must join forces in order to survive his attack.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It's a who's who of people. Kerry Russell, O'Shea Jackson Jr., literally like Ray Liotta. There's some really big name people in this movie. It is a must-watch, absolute horror fest. I cannot wait for this to come out.
Yeah, and O'Shea Jackson Jr. is Ice Cube's son, who's been in other movies as well. So that'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, he was in the that NWA biopic a while back,
which was fantastic.
Was an excellent movie. Absolutely. Yeah, Cocaine Bear. I'm a big fan of Cocaine Bear. I want a T-shirt that's the Cocaine Bear cover art. I just want that on my T-shirt. It just says Cocaine Bear.
So the bear was actually in North Georgia, but what the guy does is he drops this bag out. I don't know if he wanted to lose weight or if he planned to go back and pick it up later. But him and an accomplice jump out of the plane, both experienced skydivers, and he's got like another. I don't know how many kilograms of cocaine, 75 pounds in another duffel bag with him. And something goes wrong with his parachute, and he face plants in a driveway in Knoxville, Tennessee, wearing Gucci loafers, a bulletproof vest, night vision goggles, 75 pounds of cocaine, $4,500 in cash. This is in 1985, by the way. This is long time ago. Knives and 2 pistols. Just lands in somebody's driveway.
I don't even where to begin with this. So the coolest part is this was directed and co-produced by Elizabeth Banks, who played Effie Trinket in The Hunger Games. She was in Pitch Perfect, the film series, Pitch Perfect 2, Charlie's Angels. Yeah. Like a very well-known actress, has done a ton of stuff. She directed and co-produced this wonderful, I don't even know where to begin to call it a movie.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have to get together and I'll go see it together somehow.
This is probably the follow-up on Build Up since Snakes on a Plane.
100%. Yeah. We can do a watch party using the online sharing stuff. We should do that.
Yeah, we should. We could live stream that. We could make that a Security Weekly thing.
I'm in. Count me in. I love that idea.
I'm in.
All right, Sam, Gus, let's make this happen. Renee. All right. Thanks so much, Tyler, Katie, and Sean for joining me today. It's lovely having all 3 of you today. Nobody's going to say anything.
Bye, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Happy Antarctica Day.
And a big thanks to everybody for watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We've got a few more episodes before we wrap up the year, so keep an ear out for them, and we'll see you then.